In three, two, one. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world. Thank you for watching our show, The Conflict Management Show. We are an MMA podcast. We talk about our thoughts, their opinions, news, the fights, all that good stuff. So, as you already know, or if this is your first time, I'm your co-host. I'm one of your co-hosts, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Half Man, Half Amazing, the awkward, awesome one, Mr. Man Event. Malik Miles, and my co-host.
Future Hall of Famer one namer. It's Edon, and we are back here to talk about. We already gave you guys the preview. Now it's the review. UFC 310, the last pay-per-view of the year. Pantoja Asakura. It happened. It was interesting, and we're here to break it down.
Yes, but before we get into that, exciting news. So stuff like this doesn't really happen. Of what we're about to talk about, the beginning of a new MMA promotion. We have, there's, the big ones, of like the UFC, which we mainly cover. One championship in Asia. There's Ryzen in Japan. There's PFL in the US. Aries FC in France. What else? Am I missing anything else? UFC
Isn't
one,
the
Ryzen, Aries, PFL.
isn't the Polish one called KS1?
Ah, yeah, I think. So along with that, this new promotion, actually, it's not even a promotion, from what I understand. It's an organization. They're trying to make it into like an NFL, an NHL, an MLB type situation where there will be teams, there will be logos, there will be all that good stuff. So I actually wrote down this information. So the concept sounds interesting. There's some things I'm kind of not sure about, but it will be six global teams across four continents. 300 fighters are currently signed. They're having their first GFL draft. That's what it's going to be called, the Global Fight League. They're having their first draft on January 24th, like an NFL draft type situation. 120 fighters of that 300 will be signed to one of the six teams, and there will be 180 free agents that are able to be picked up throughout the season, just like in any other sports league. 10 cities have been confirmed. Some fighters and managers have been named. The teams, the names, the logos, all that stuff is to be announced. Teams are named after major cities in the world. Interesting caveat, just like an NFL team, you don't have to be from the city, or you don't have to move to that city. Or if you don't want to, you could play, you could play in Atlanta, you could play in LA. But you can be coached by your team instead of the team you end up on. Like, you be on that team and get coached by your guys from your gym if you're coming from American Top Team and you're going to City Kickboxing, right? You can have that, or if you want that whoever your team coaches, if you want that person in your corner for extra help, you can have that. There'll be 10 weight categories, two fighters per weight category. So it'll be like a singles, like a team match, like in wrestling, where you'll be 1v1 going against whoever. Seven men's divisions, three women's divisions. They want to try to cut extreme weight cutting. So for the men's, they'll go from heavyweight to bantamweight, and for female, it sounds like it will be strawweight, flyweight, bantamweight, but the weight will be 120, 130, and 140. But the caveat to this is light heavyweight, which is normally 205 in the
Hmm.
UFC, and the GFL, light heavyweight will be 225. Middleweight will be 200 instead of 185. Welterweight will be 180 instead of 170. Bantamweight will be 145. Featherweight 155. Interesting thing about this, another interesting thing, they'll have their own app. Fighters benefit from any revenue they bring in. So it's a 50-50 split. There will be seasons, just like any other sports league. and they're with a point system that will go into a playoff. So again, 4 points are available for every fight. 4 points for every finish, 3 points for a decision, 2 points for a draw, 1 point for decision loss, but you get 0 points if you get finished. Only top 4 teams make it to the playoffs, and it's a global schedule. 8% of a fighter's total pay goes into their retirement, 2% goes into insurance, and and it will be launching in April. Some of the people who are signed currently are names like Wanderlei Silva from Pride, and the UFC, Alexander Gustafsson, Tyron Woodley, Luke Rockhold, Anthony Pettis, Kevin Lee, Benson Henderson, Fabricio Verdum, Junior Dos Santos, Frank Mir, Thiago Santos, B. Win, Killer B, Gegard Mousasi, Craig Hardy, Andrei Arlovsky, just to name a few, and so on and so forth. This is very interesting. You don't see this happen often. It will be teams like the Tokyo Tigers, the Stockholm Samurai, you know, uh, the New York Knights, just named after global teams, and the teams will get drafted to each other. What do you think? Since it will be technically a sports league, since rather than a promotion, what are your thoughts? What are your opinions? It looks like you have thoughts.
Yeah. First of all, I want to correct a missed thing that I said before. The Polish MMA promotion is KSW, not KS1. I was mixing up KSW and K1, which is the kickboxing promotion. So my bad earlier. But as far as this, I want to start with the positive. So positively, I really like that there's another option for fighters, and I really like that they're trying to take care of the fighters and giving them pension and insurance, and especially insurance I think is a huge one that I would really like. It doesn't feel like I'm ever going to see it given legal uh, precedent that's been set with the UFC and with other sports leagues. I would really like it if the UFC, if you reach in the same way, if you're working for a place and they have a retirement thing, you have to work a certain amount of time there before you get vested and you get your benefits. I would like it if after a certain number of UFC fights, the UFC would give you, even if it's really bare minimum stuff, just like some level of insurance for health insurance, life insurance, just something so that the people who contribute to the product, whether it's them or their families, can be taken care of at least a little bit. That would make me feel better as a fan of the sport. Uh, but on the negative side, I really don't like the whole idea of. I mean, PFL has had the points thing forever. They do it on an individual basis and do it for like a playoff type deal to see who's in, who's out. But the PFL is not succeeding with their points thing. Anytime someone tunes in, it's just a bunch of stuff on the screen that's more confusing than it is helpful for the product. So that's confusing for people, and they're not going to get it, even if they've been watching a while and someone really understands it. I don't know that it adds anything really to the excitement and the watchability of it. And I feel like the team concept has been tried. I don't remember who did it, but I'm pretty
IFL.
sure that somebody tried. Yeah, I think you're right. IFL was it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, this concept has definitely been tried before, for sure, and it didn't work. This isn't this isn't traditionally how any combat, uh, entertainment product is enjoyed, but with a team aspect. That's really not. I know people. I saw the interview that Ariel Helwani did with Kevin Lee and Anthony Pettis, and I know they were saying like, oh, it's kind of reminiscent of collegiate or high school wrestling in that you're competing for yourself, but you're also competing for your team, and there's that added motivation of the guys on your team and doing it for them as well. And I get all that, but the part of the collegiate wrestling season that's actually popular, that gets any sort of viewership, isn't the team meets. It's the finals. It's the thing that people are interested to tune in is typically the final day, if we're being honest, of the NCAA wrestling tournament. And they're tuning in to see who's going to win at the weight class. It's very impressive what teams like Penn State have done, but realistically, when people are tuning in, they're not tuning in to see a team unless they're a fan of that team. They're more so tuning in to see the individual. It's we consume the martial arts through the individual. That's what we're here to see, is who expresses themselves. And you really can't get away from it. Is an individual sport. It doesn't make a lot of sense that someone who's really good, who doesn't interact with these other people in the contest, has their outcomes tied to other people in other contests. It 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 just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't think that it's going to work. I'm happy for the fighters involved that it seems like, assuming the money's reliable, which that was another thing that bothered me in the interview with the guy who's going to be the commissioner of the league. He didn't want to disclose where the money's coming from for this. That bothers me, especially because, fight promotions have come and gone very quickly. And it, it all just kind of adds up to, is this going to be here in 2 years? I doubt it. So good for the fighters if they're getting paid and they're getting some security from this. That's great. I just don't see how this is viable and how this is going to turn into anything. It just seems like another kind of thing that got thrown at the wall in the MMA world with somebody's money that we don't know exactly who's funding it.
Tech guy, some type of tech guy.
I know, but he refused to name him and said like,
Yeah.
"Oh," so that makes me think it's possibly shady money coming, and wouldn't be the first time that that's happened with fight promotion. So again, good for the fighters. Get whatever you can get. Especially a lot of them are veteran names, so especially those guys we advocate, go out there and get what you can while the getting's good. But I just cannot see this being successful. What about you? Where are you at with this?
I'm half and half on this. I think this could be really interesting. Like, this is a really interesting concept. And I think that it has potential to be big, in my opinion, because this concept sounds like a fire concept for a really dope video game. You know,
Mm,
Team USA versus Team Japan, Team Mexico versus Team Canada, you know, having the New York Knights take on the Stockholm Swarm, you know, have I think that concept is really interesting. And seeing fighters get taken care of is nice. And you see, hey, there is no show, there is no win. Here's your base pay. This is what you're gonna get paid. And off the top, 8% of this is going to your retirement, 2% is going to insurance. If you continue every time you win, you get a bonus. Like, you're gonna get paid more in your next fight, which is an interesting concept. I think that is really interesting and really cool. I think that the team concept, while it hasn't worked in previous organizations, I think it's doable because the Ultimate Fighter is a team competition, technically. And we've seen it for 30 seasons, technically. And there is technically a point system to the Ultimate Fighter because every fight you win is a point for your team. And if you are riding on a coach's team to win, at least I know for me, when seasons I watched, when like it was Team Grasso versus Team Shevchenko, I was definitely pulling for Team Alexa Grasso, and I was counting every single point that her team won, and I was just like, oh, I want to see, you build up the stories between the fighters, and you get to hear their backstory and where they're from, and this and that, and you kind of get connected to the fighters, but you hope they win for Team Grasso, or if you're on Team Shevchenko, right? So every time when she would get a point, I was like, yes, let's go. That's 3-2 or 3-1. So I think that it's possible, especially if you have some cool names and some cool team names, and you have cool logos. I know they're getting coaches, like fairly well known coaches, to kind of lead these teams. Like, let's say if you had for the Canadian team, you have Faris Sarhabi, George St. Pierre's coach, or Greg Jackson, the famed coach for John Jones, or like you're having what's his face? I see his face. The coach for City Kickboxing, Eugene, or like Fernando Lopez, with the MMA Factory, so on and so forth, right? Francisco Grasco for Team Lobo, right? I think Plano for Alex's team, right? I think that you could get attached to a certain team, especially if it's like maybe where you're from, maybe it is a team Japan or a team Mexico or a team whatever, right? I think that part is really fascinating, and I think it could work. And it does feel very reminiscent of like wrestling team duels, where you are wrestling for yourself, and if you win, obviously that's great for you because more points, more experience, you get to move up the ladder. So I think it can work. I think that having legends, certain veterans or certain legends, Vandelay, all those people kind of in like Vandelay, right? From that Pride days, early UFC days, from Bare Knuckle, from PFL, gathering all these people, former title challengers like Gustafson, make it interesting, and then adding new people into it, I think will be cool. And I think as a team, I like to see how this team concept is going to work. Because having some of these veterans with these new guys, I think will benefit both people, right? New guys get to learn from veterans get to learn some new stuff, right? I think that is really dope and really interesting. But I think what will make or break this, I guess, organization, like the success of the GFL, I think will primarily hinge on where are they going to be streaming this or putting this out. Because I think what has failed the PFL is, I feel like it's fairly hard to find a PFL fight. I don't know where exactly they put their fights on. I think the good thing about the UFC is it's very easy to find a UFC fight. It's on every commercial. It's on ESPN Plus. It is on pay-per-view. It is on, you don't have to download anything really new, essentially, right? If you have ESPN Plus, you can do that. If you want to get the pay-per-view, you can do that. If you have Hulu, you can just watch it through ESPN Plus. You know what I mean? All that type of stuff, right? It's very easy. And then also One Championship, I think it's gained a lot more popularity because it's very easy to find One Championship because it's on Amazon Prime, and just about everybody has an Amazon, right? I think that PFL, I can't tell you off the top of my head where you would watch a PFL fight.
I'm pretty sure they're also on ESPN.
Oh, I had zero clue. But that goes to show you, if I don't know where to watch your fights, I how am I supposed to watch it? And sometimes you'll see people will go out of their way to be like, oh yeah, you can watch us on this very niche app or this very niche platform. You got to go out and like download this app to watch our fights. If you make it difficult for fans to watch your fight, they're not going to go. This is not Noah's Ark. If you build it, they will not just come. You got to make it as easy as possible for customers. your future clients, future customers, that I know they're building an app to put their fights on, but I think that just putting your fights on your app, what is what is the benefit? Everyone has a lot of apps on their phones nowadays, and a lot of people don't want to just add random apps or add more apps to their phone. So what is this app providing value for? Like, what is the value of this having this app on your phone, right? It's a new organization. No one really knows about it. A lot of people, like you said, have kind of their like skepticism about it because there's been a lot of fight promotions that's come and gone. Is this just for fights? Is this just for that? Some people may go and some people may watch it. But I think that if this if they can land like a deal, like maybe a Hulu deal or Amazon Prime deal or Amazon deal, right? Or like ESPN and really ESPN Plus or ESPN proper, right? Some type of network, anything, any of the main easy ones, I think that will be big for them. And then very much promote that everywhere so people can see it, people know. But if you can't land a deal with one of those, I think you put it on YouTube. Create a channel for GFL, name it Global Fight League or GFL, whatever it is. You can post your fights on your app. So, you probably spent money on that, but then take that clip and put it on YouTube. Put the shorts of it, the highlights of it. Because majority of people will not go to that. I think at most fight fans are not going to just, hey, let me go download this app I've never heard of just to watch this fight that I don't know may or may not be good. But you put it on YouTube, you get the views up, you're making money from the views from that YouTube video. And you're building a fan base at the same time. So when you get through chance, you build up enough of an audience, you'll get the chance to get those TV deals, those streaming deals, because you can say, hey, I got 10 million subscribers, 10 million people believe in this product that we're trying to promote, right? But if it's all on this app and not a whole lot of people know this app or not a whole lot of people want to go there, maybe enough people who really rock with the product may go and add the app later. But I think that putting it on the app solely would be a mistake, just in my opinion, because now are you charging me to watch this? So, and if that's the case, you're making me go get an app. Then you're making me go pay for fights that I don't know may or may not be good. I think you're putting up a lot of barriers for
Yeah.
the success of your business. But I think if it's fights, make it easy as possible for people to get to. What is the UFC got like 100 million subscribers or like 87 million or whatever that number is?
I mean, it's going back to your earlier point about The Ultimate Fighter. I will also say The Ultimate Fighter is insanely cheap to produce. So its longevity is a little bit different than whatever this is going to be. And it also can kind of be linked to the UFC. So the UFC can run The Ultimate Fighter A super cheap, and B, even if it was losing money, they could run it at a loss for a while because they are a profitable company. Uh, this this kind of venture, it's I don't think that as much as having older guys, you can't claim that you have like the best promotion. I think that's fine. I think you could still get people to tune in, you know, just for the name factor. You don't have to always be selling yourself as the best. You could just be a bit of fun. Uh, but another thing that I don't like is I know that there could be some novelty with the locality aspect in terms of having teams for cities, but I mean, I've seen this concept done other places, like primarily in esports, and the this isn't in my opinion, this is just not how people consume content anymore. It's not like back in the early days of baseball where you would go out and root for the home team. I think with the internet, the way that people root for things now is they're looking for individuals to connect to either be an avatar or somebody that they like for some reason, either because, that represents them. There's some sort of aspect that they like about it. It's inspiring to them, or uh, they think they'd be friends with that person, or something like that. There's a reason people get more invested in individuals now in the way that they root and the way that they're a fan of things. And I just think the locality aspect doesn't make a lot of sense, especially with a draft where these aren't established kind of units. There's nothing tying necessarily the team to a certain place. Like if let's say there's a Mexico team, but the Mexico team drafts all all people from Europe. If you're a Mexico fan and they're going to have an event in Mexico, you might go if you like the individuals that are either on the team or are going to be at the event, really. But you're not going to be out there repping super hard for the team if there's another fighter that you like more that's on another team. You're just going to root for who you like best. So the whole locality of it, I don't think works in a modern setting. I think successful entertainment is moving away from hyper locality instead of towards it. And there's just too much here for me that has to go right for this to be a success. And I just don't see it. Like someone would have to A, have super deep pockets for this and be willing to lose a lot of it. And B, would have to really do something innovative, like something really new that we haven't seen before to really draw people's attention. And the marketing would have to be excellent. Like you have to hit so many home runs for this project to work for me. And I just can't see it. This was a project that I think they were saying that they were going to launch in 2023 initially, and now they're saying that they're going to launch in 2025, which if I'm going to spin it a positive, I could say it shows long-term commitment to a vision and they want to do it the right way and all that. But at the same time, this just feels like something where if it does get off the ground, how much resistance can they stand, and what do they consider a success? They don't have, like you're saying, we don't know where this is going to live. So are they selling it themselves? Are they putting it on a big network? It's in either way. It's Bellator was hooked up with Paramount. Paramount's a big network, uh, and that didn't necessarily work out for them. There's a whole bunch of different. This feels like a you took a little bit of everyone else's playbook that's like a secondary or a tertiary player in the space, and you threw it all in. And I know they're not trying to compete with the UFC; they're trying to be their own thing and just be more fun than like saying we're a serious promotion with the best fighters and all that. But I feel like whoever put this plan together doesn't understand what's interesting to the audience about MMA and who they could possibly get to watch MMA. I feel like this doesn't bring anybody new into the fold with the team concept or the locality or any of this stuff. It's you're probably getting older fans because you have older fighters, the legends and the names. So you're appealing to hardcores with the names you brought and the fighters, but then you're throwing all these in different concepts that I don't think are going to bring in a new audience or a younger audience anyway. So I just don't see how this is going to work. They'd have to really thread the needle on a lot of different loops here, and I just can't see it.
I feel like for me, I'm actually kind of excited for this. To
Okay.
be honest, I think that I'm cautiously optimistic. If they make it easy for me to watch their fights, I'll go check it out because it sounds very interesting. Like, imagine if this was a video game idea for an Xbox One or a PS5. This sounds like a game I would definitely buy. If they told you, hey, here's you make a fighter, we're gonna have teams in multiple continents. You get to draft your team, you get to be a part of the LA Lions or the I, I could not think of the city in Spain that I was trying to think of.
Madrid,
But
Barcelona, Sevilla.
yeah, the Barcelona Bears,
Okay.
right? For lack of better words or lack of time, right? So I think that would be really cool, and you get to see the team fighters from each team because I think people kind of do that with sports right now. Because how many times have we heard people say, oh, "I'm not a really fan of teams; I'm a fan of players,"
Yeah.
right? Like some people may not be Dodgers fans, but they are Shohei Ohtani fans.
Right.
Some people may not be Lakers fans, but they are fans of LeBron. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or Steph Curry, or uh, what's his name? Jamar Chase from the Bengals,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I think that, and then you do have your hardcore fans who are like, they are uh, a Vegas Raider fan,
Mhm.
a Chicago Bears fan, Green Bay fan, Dolphins fan through and through, right?
Mhm.
And all these teams had to start at some point. The Panthers are literally a team. All these teams had to start at some point with zero cachet, right? The Panthers literally started within our generation, and now they're a super established team. They're not the best team, but they are established. I think that every team's got to start at some point because I know that the Ultimate Fighter is easy to put on now, or not easy to put on, but it's like fairly low cost. But in the very beginning, this was a revolutionary idea. The Ultimate Fighter was like this super revolutionary idea. Hey, we're gonna take guys. Hey, you want to become great one day? Try this out. Da 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 da. And then the Ultimate Fighter kind of kickstart the Forrest Griffin versus Stephen Bonner finals match. Is I feel like what kicked off the popularity of the UFC slash the Ultimate Fighter, and it wasn't from what I heard, from what I hear, from what I've been told. It wasn't anything too special leading up to that finals match. Like there were some cool matches here and there, but like the thing that had people calling people like, "Yo, this was wild," was that Forrest Griffin Stephen Bonner match, and I think that if they can do it right, they could have that moment where you just had these two teams who are really dope, and these two dudes or these two ladies have like this wild moment because it's so much easier to go viral now. You know, you have a crazy match or a crazy knockout, you go to the finals, this and that. You have it an in-person event where people show up. You do your marketing, do your whatever it is. You got to really go hard on the marketing and making people aware of this. You get people to show up. You put it on YouTube. If you can't get a major streaming, because I know you said Paramount, but who's really on Paramount? You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
that Bellator had that Paramount deal back when it was an actual like network that people watched. Like
but that's what
before,
I'm saying.
I forget what it was called before Paramount Network, but like they were on a real deal TV channel with actual distribution and like corporate partners and all that stuff, and they never turned into anything.
Yeah, I think that that's the thing, though, right? It's all about what. It's not just getting a TV deal. I feel like it's getting a TV deal that on a network people watch or streaming platform a lot of people are already on, right? Someone could be on AMC, but I feel like only people who go to AMC with the people who are watching the Walking Dead or like Western movies. I feel like, right? It's been a long time since we've seen the channel because I used to be a Walking Dead fan. But I think that if you are on like ESPN, that's a big deal. Generally, sports people are going to ESPN if you market it correctly, right? I think that, but I think it all hinges on how easy is it for me to go check this out and how good of a job did you do on rolling this out. I think that you need to shoot really good promos, get highlights, get people who are interesting and charismatic to kind of make easily digestible reels, like IG reels, YouTube reels of just, hey, short, sweet, to the point. This is who we are. This is what we're trying to do. We're not here to be, oh, the best fight organization ever. We are here for good times and good vibes and exciting fights. That's what you're here for. You know, if you ever play Street Fighter 6, that like, you know what I mean? Like the street art aspect of it, make it fun, make it interesting, make it colorful, make it, or just make it exciting, make it appealing to the eye. And people will, out of curiosity, be like, oh man, if it's on YouTube, they will check out everybody's on YouTube. If it's on Netflix, everyone's on Netflix. They will check it out. Most likely, if it is interesting, if you could put together a really, just from a business perspective, you can make a really interesting trailer or reel. I think if you put it on something that is not super commonly used or on a network that isn't geared towards sports, like take for example Bellator and PFL, right? Those organizations are in our country. They make stuff in our country, and we, I, I don't watch it. I don't know if you do, but I feel like it's fair to say that we watch the UFC a way more amount. I don't think I've seen a Bellator event, nor have I seen a PFL event. I've known through highlights like who were the big names, like a big name, like when Kayla Harrison, she's a star, right? You're gonna know. I knew who she was without having to watch PFL, really. Like Michael Chandler, when you saw Machida go there and you heard that, kind of gave it some buzz, right? There's a few people here and there, and they had that video game, right? Learned that's where you learn some of the people, but I think that it's really how they put it out there because a lot of MMA fans are very. It's like Samsung and iPhone and the Pixel and the Google Pixel. People who are iPhone people are going to be iPhone people. People who are going to be Samsung people, Android people are going to be Samsung Android people. People who are Google Pixel people are going to be Google Pixel people. You're just like UFC fans generally are going to watch the UFC. You know what I mean? Like generally UFC fans are not going to go out and watch the PFL or the Bellator. You know, super hardcore fans might, but the general UFC fan is not going to be like, I wonder what the PFL is doing on whatever day they have fights, right? No shade to them, but like, and generally, if you are a one championship person, probably you're gonna be watching one championship, and there might be some crossover with the UFC. But I'm pretty sure you're not gonna be like, what is this other organization? You know, so you got to bridge that gap of making it interesting for all combat sports fans and being like, hey, we're not trying to pull you away from this. We're not trying to be like, hey, we're going to be rivals. Hey, this is good times, good vibes. Make it exciting. If they are, I think that as a fan of combat sports, I think that's what would make me watch it. Is making it easy for me to go and see, and I don't gotta. It's somewhere I'm already gonna be on, and make it exciting. I think the team aspect is fun. I think it's interesting. I'm cautiously optimistic to see how this turns out, just because I like the concept. But I'm very interested in how it will. I know it's gonna, because this could revolutionize the entire industry. but it's going to take a Herculean effort to have like a really successful event. So I know they were supposed to launch it in 23, but they didn't. I think it kind of gives me a little bit more confidence in what they may be doing that it took until 25. I feel like me and you both are always going to watch the UFC. It is the number one promotion. It is the peak. They are the gold standard, you know? I
Yeah.
think everyone is trying to measure up to what the UFC has accomplished, what they have. So I think that generally trying to be like, oh, we're the best. I don't think that's right, markets. Like the best business strategy. I think the best business strategy is be like, hey, we're new kids on the block, we're fun, we're exciting. This, you know what I mean? Uh
Well,
the but go ahead.
it's, did you have more thoughts on the GFL?
Oh, that is
Okay.
all I
Because
had.
personally, my last little bit on it, I would like it to work out. I don't see how it's going to, but we'll still, keep our eyes and our ears open as we head into 2025 to see what they're going to do, where it's going to end up, and how this all progresses. But like you said, the UFC is the gold standard, and let's get back to the gold standard and UFC 310.
Yeah, the fights turned out they were they were they were interesting. I think that I almost said Taporia because there was something I wanted to mention about Taporia, but I'll hold that for another second. The I think the overall amount of fights were pretty good.
Hmm.
I think that there were some slow ones here and there, but I think that how good is Pantoja, man? I'm a little salty that Kai Asakura didn't win, but it was exciting though. I am interested in seeing more of him fight because you would imagine someone who's going into their very first fight, who is going into the UFC, who's into a debut fight into the championship, would be kind of a little bit more gun shy. You know what I mean? First time in a cage instead of a ring. He came in flying me out of the gate. I think that, but Pantoja is just that good, and I think he's underrated, definitely. But I think it's time that we start putting him in all time category, best flyweight of all time. I mean, DJ is obviously the best with Demetrius Johnson, but I think he makes a strong case for second best of all time.
Yeah, I think with this performance and the nature of the rest of the card. So the rest of the card wasn't bad by any means, but as far as highlight moments and big moments, uh, this was not one of those cards. This wasn't a UFC 300 or a UFC 299 where you're thinking about, wow, this year was so big, and you're going to pick out 2, 3 moments from the same exact card. There was a few exciting things. There was some good fights, but as far as whose evening was it, who owned the night in Las Vegas, it was Alessandro Pantoja.
Yeah,
This was
because
his night, this was his card, and of the people who fought, who's going to bring the momentum? It's Pantoja. It's he's When you think back to this card 6 months from now, you're going to remember this as the Pantoja party where he went from champion who defended the belt to guy who moved himself into, like you're saying, that larger conversation that you have about flyweight now. So
because
now begins the title defense run where we see, can you stack up to DJ?
yeah, it's crazy because people don't realize it, but Pantoja has tied a lot of or getting close to a lot of Demetrius Johnson's records. With the win over Asakura, he has tied both Demetrius Johnson and like Mighty Mouse and Benavidez for the most wins at flyweight, and has tied Figueroa, Davison Figueroa, and Mighty Mouse again for most finishes at 7 finishes in the UFC, which is pretty crazy that he's getting up in that number, and he's beaten. I think it's who's next, right? Because he's beaten 9 of the top 10
Hmm.
fighters in his division. I mean, we all know. I think me and you both know who's the crown prince of this division once he gets back and string a couple more wins together. And we're talking about Tatsuro Taira from Japan, the young prodigy, the jiu-jitsu wizard, the grappling. So I lack of better words, the grappling, the great grappler. There we go. That's what we're gonna say. But this dude is, fight IQ is really high. But when you look at who is he beaten, right? Pandoja's beat Moreno, Brandon Moreno, who's also just a very top tier fighter, great guy, one of the best, right? He's beaten Brian Roval, another really dope fighter, really top level guy. He's beaten so it's Brandon Moreno, Brandon Roval. He has beaten Kai Kara France on the Ultimate Fighter. He has beaten what Albazi too, right?
I don't know if Albazi's ever got that far, but he's
Okay.
beat Urseg.
He's beaten Ursig. He's beaten a number of people on the way up and
Most of
at
the division.
yeah, on the way up or at champion, right? And there's people who are the only person he hasn't beaten is Tatsuro. I feel like people come up, but he's coming off of a loss, and I think it's starting to get to the point where it's Pantoja, and there's a clear 1 and 2, right, between Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval. I think that's a clear number 1 and number 2, and then you have your everybody else. You know what I mean? Your Manel Cops, who the Albazis, all those guys, and then you have the kind of newer guys who are on the come up, like Tatsuro Taira. You see Kai Car France, who is really good. Who's next? Muhammad Makayev got kicked out. What do you think is next for Pantoja?
I think the most realistic ones. I think it was interesting that Davison Figueiredo offered to come back down to 25
But can
because
he make the weight though?
yeah, I don't know how realistic that is. And I could see the appeal for Pantoja a little bit in that hey, you get to beat a former champion who has a win over you. Get that one back. That'd be nice. So I think that could be interesting and at least would have a little bit of star power. Uh, Other than that, I think the two that are really on the table are Kai Kara France and Brandon Royval. Uh, I think Royval is the most deserving, but he's also lost twice, maybe 3 times
Yeah,
to.
between Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval, they have a combined 5 losses to Pantoja,
Yeah, so
which is crazy.
I don't know. I guess we'll see what the UFC wants to do and what they think the people want to see because I it's going to be a tough argument to convince anybody that he's going to lose. It's that's a really tough sell right now that anybody up at the top is going to beat him. It's the closest that we've seen was Brandon with the split decision uh for the belt initially, but Pantoja just feels completely different now. He seems to have gone up a level. And if he at the previous level, if he already beat Moreno and now he's gone up a level, I'm not necessarily convinced that that would be a competitive fight. I think that would still probably be the biggest name in the division that he could fight. So I could still see if Brandon got one more win, them saying, "Yeah, let's run that back." Uh, I think Pantoja doesn't necessarily translate super well to 135. I don't think that he's super big. So I think this could be a rare kind of new thing for the UFC nowadays of a guy sitting in his division, clearing it out completely, leaving no question, and not necessarily ever going up to 135 unless there was an opportunistic matchup. So we might just see a guy who, in the modern day of MMA, when it doesn't really happen anymore, might actually attempt and even get close or maybe even break title defenses for his weight class and the record. Because I don't see him move out and I don't see who can beat him other than Tyra, and I don't know how long it's going to take for Tyra to get back up to him and or get that fight. There's all sorts of things that can happen in MMA that your performances might warrant a title shot, but there's all different. You could get injured. There could be a mix-up. You could end up just missing each other. We had Khabib and Tony booked how many times, and it just never ended up working out. So at some point, that's going to be the fight, but when that actually happens is not up for any of us to decide.
I actually have a phenomenal idea I was thinking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Manel Kopp's in the division, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talented fighter. He does what he does.
Mm-hmm.
You have, it's a swamp at 125 right now. We don't know who's, there's a lot of who's this, who's that, who's the fight. You do Manel Kopp versus Kai Kara France, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of beef. They don't like each other. They're both really great fighters. Have Manel Kopp go against Kai Kara France. And on the other end, have Brandon Moreno go against Roy Val. The winner of those two fight each other. That person goes on to fight Pantoja. Or let's say the Manel Kopp, Kai Kara France fight, crazy finish, right? For Kopp or Kai Kara France. I think you make an argument for him, either one, to go and fight for the belt, fight for another shot at the belt. I think that if Brandon Moreno puts on another performance like he did against Albazi, because that was a very one-sided fight. Brandon Moreno versus Albazi, I feel that was about as one-sided could get. I almost felt bad. But me being a Brandon Moreno fan, I was here for it. I was like, yeah, hopefully he gets another shot. I would like to see Brandon Moreno get another shot. I think that would get another shot. That would be cool. But I think that you do, whoever that winner is, have them fight for the belt. I think that you keep Kaya Sakura and Tatsuro Taira away from each other until they get to the top. Just kind of like how I was saying, how we talked about like way back when Ian Gary and Shafkat and JDM started in the division. I was saying you keep these guys separate. You wait for them to get either to the top or close to the top, and then that's when you have them fight, right? Happened just like I planned it. Shafkat and Ian Gary kind of grew at like points like that, and they eventually fought at the top. We saw that fight happen. I think that you wait to have a Asakura versus Taira fight when either one of them is the champion or it's like a number one contenders fight, right?
Hmm.
I think that will be very exciting and could be very fun for the division. Speaking about Tatsuro Tada, oh, do you have, before I move on to the next point, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I'm good. I'll just on Asakura really quick.
Mhm.
Uh, I think you know, no need to blow this out of proportion. He's still a very exciting fighter. Uh, UFC debut, a whole bunch of different factors in why he might not have had his best performance. So uh, definitely still a super fun, exciting addition to the division. And I believe there were officials from Ryzen in the house, so uh, maybe this will open up an opportunity for collaboration between the UFC and Ryzen, where uh, the best of Ryzen can start making its way to the UFC, and there could be some sort of cross promotion, not directly like that because the UFC doesn't do that, but where maybe Ryzen's on Fight Pass or something like that, like you know, some sort of working togetherness to bring the top Japanese talent into the UFC, because it seems like the UFC has identified Japan as a market that they want to grow into in a similar way to what they did with Mexico like 5 years ago.
And if the UFC made an atomweight division for women's, you get fill that division with fighters from Asia. It'd be very exciting. There's a lot of really dope Asian female fighters, female fighters from Asia who fight in atomweight, which could make the atomweight division very exciting. That's just my personal opinion. I think that would drum up a lot of excitement. I think that I'm definitely gonna check in and see anytime you see Kaya Sakura on the fight. I think I will check in and continue to watch him continue to sport. I think that either Asakura or Taira, I think they are both future champions. But moving forward beyond that, we mentioned Ian Gary and Shavkat before. The fight was closer than a lot of people thought. There wasn't no big like, oh man, this is a crazy moment. But I just really also realized this. Shavkat fought to a decision with a torn MCL.
Yep.
I feel like also that's why I feel like Shavkat didn't look like the usual Shavkat destroyer of men type performance. But before I continue on with my opinions on it, because I have some opinions on it, what did you think?
I thought judges got it correct. It was one of the most clear 3-2s of all time.
I agree.
Uh, and I will say what's annoyed me after the fight
I wonder if it's the
uh,
same thing.
is everybody heaping praise on Ian Gary, and like
For
Ian
losing
Gary's
better?
yeah, Ian Gary has somehow turned a corner with a bunch of online fans, I think, because in person I think he still got booed. But for whatever reason, the online fans that I've seen have seemed to, and the media have turned a corner with Ian Gary, where now he's this lovable, plucky upstart who gave it his best out there and just came up short, and oh, he's gonna keep going, and he's so dedicated, and wow. And I mentioned this a little bit in the preview with him bringing Charles Oliveira in the corner, and how some people that was enough where they started to go, oh, Ian's not so bad. Uh, I don't agree at all. Ian Gary is still the exact same guy to me. And if some other people who aren't as well liked by the media members had been saying the type of things that Ian Gary had been saying, I think people would be calling them delusional. They would be, you know, celebrating that that person lost. I don't understand why. The only thing I can guess is that in person, Ian Gary must be a very nice guy, which wouldn't shock me at all. It's I think Ian Gary gets in trouble because he doesn't understand marketing, nor does he understand how to present himself well to a global audience. I don't think that he does himself any favors. I think he's probably a super nice guy. I think he's a very good boy, but he doesn't understand who he wants to be or how he wants to present that. And I I think for whatever reason people are giving him a pass. He lost this fight. He won 2 rounds, but at no point did I think that he was going to win the fight. He had one moment where he took Shavkat's back, where people were convinced that he was going to get the submission.
But Shavkat turned. It was a deep submission, and Shavkat turned and got out of the submission.
Right. And
That
to
also shows
me,
how tough Shavkat is.
from the defense I was seeing, at no point did I think, oh, it's over here. Shavkat was constantly fighting the hand. At no point was I like, oh, it's locked in. It's over. I know the broadcast was screaming and stuff like that, so people got excited. But at no point was the the second hand buried behind the head or anything like that, where Shavkat couldn't get out of it easily, or where Shavkat wasn't defending himself properly. It's He was locked in the entire time. He fought with a messed up knee, and he won handily against a, a top 5 guy in the division who's undefeated, coming in there with all the confidence that he could possibly have in the world against Shavkat, and all he could muster was 2 rounds, and didn't look that great doing it. So to me, and people say, "Oh, he can't perform like that against Bilal." I just don't know what some people are watching most of the time. The idea that Bilal's this great destroyer when he beat Leon Edwards at like 3 in the morning,
With a bad
and
spine.
yeah, and Leon has still not fought since that fight with his injury. Uh, and then he beat Sean Brady, who was an up and coming undefeated guy who seemed like he got overconfident in the fight and ended up getting finished. I believe in that. But people aren't out here saying Sean Brady deserves a title shot. They're not out here saying Sean Brady is the next guy. So I don't understand this mythical Bilal that people have convinced themselves of, and this face turn for Ian Gary are all just creations to me that I don't understand where anyone else seeing it. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills with some of these people where Bilal is now this dominant champion, and uh, Shavkat really needs to raise his game if he's gonna. Shavkat had a messed up knee and he won easily. It Not easily, it was a fight. It was back and forth and competitive. There's no fist fight between top 5 guys in the UFC that's going to be easy, but I never felt for a moment that Shavkat was in real danger. He didn't look hurt by any of the punches or the kicks from Ian Gary. He looked impressive. He wasn't the straightforward on the gas, uh, pressure the whole time guy that we've seen in some other fights against lesser competition. But he was still extremely impressive, and he showed something that champions do, which is when you're hurt or things aren't going your way, you scrape it out. You manage to get the rounds you need and do it whatever way possible to win the fight, and he did that. So it just also makes me think, what would if you dropped young GSP, like just starting out GSP, into the current UFC, what would be the narrative on him? Because there were fights where GSP looked very dominant, but there were fights sometimes where guys would neutralize him a little bit, where he had to go to and do different things and do things that weren't as exciting. So would GSP just go on a run where he was like double leg blasting guys through the cage and everybody would be so excited? And then the minute he got up to, the top 10 and had to win a decision, which GSP frequently did when he was at the top against the best guys, would people say, he's overrated? I just don't get it. I'm still very high on Shavkat, and I think people are convincing themselves that Bilal or Ian Gary are these great products for whatever reason, maybe to entertain themselves. I don't get it. This guy is absolutely the champion and wait for me. And I don't see Ian Gary ever beating him. I don't see Bilal ever beating him. I don't see any of the guys of the older generation beating him. I'll need to see someone else from Shavkat's generation or younger do something extraordinary against a top level opponent for me to ever believe that they can beat him. He's still just as good as he was 2 weeks ago, in my mind. So I'm still super high on him. Ian Gary will be a good guy who never wins the belt. That's his destiny.
The I think that I also think that while it was a competitive fight, I don't think it was like, oh man, that was just a back and forth war. I mean, it was a very high level chess match
Mm.
between two fighters who are very skilled and have really high fight IQ and have a lot of potential. Was it this but I know some people thought it was going to be this back and forth war, and they were just going to go back and forth, back and forth. Honestly, I never thought that to be. I mean, I thought there was the potential for that, but I think the more I thought about it, I didn't really think that was like going to be a possibility because when you get two really high level guys who are really skilled and have a lot of potential and who have a lot of skill, it turns into a high level chess match. And I think that the Shavkat was the right winner just because Ian Gary didn't do enough. Because in the first two rounds, there was the moment in the third, he won the third. There was a moment with the rear naked choke that was like pretty big. But I think the decision came down to the first two rounds. And those two rounds, I feel like Ian Gary kind of gave those rounds, not gave up, but I feel like he gave those rounds up, or set those rounds up because those rounds were decided by one punch, one strike, and that came from Shavkat. And there were big punches, those were big strikes that were like, oh man, that's crazy. And to know now that Shavkat had a torn MCL, and still fought for 15 minutes on a torn MCL and got out of that super tight choke, I think that it shows a lot of toughness and resolve from Shavkat and just how good he is. Because we were watching that fight thinking like, man, Shavkat's really good. He didn't get the finish, but he still won that fight. And then you find out, oh yeah, he was fighting the entire time on a torn MCL, which I give him even more props for. I agree. I think that Shavkat's the future champion. I still am on the Shavkat train, Shavkat bandwagon. I think that like he's gonna be a future champion. I don't really see anyone at this division for the foreseeable future, as of right now, who is gonna challenge Shavkat or beat Shavkat in a 1v1 fist fight. I think that because of the fight with Ian Gary and the torn MCL, a lot of people are like, oh, it's closer now. I still think Shavkat beats Bilal handedly. It's still 80-20 in my mind. 80-20 Shavkat. I think that Ian Gary, I know he's getting a lot of praise, I guess, for losing better. Like he had to like and I understand Ian Gary's perspective of, hey, you went toe to toe with the boogeyman of the division, the guy who is the guy at welterweight, right? The guy everyone's looking towards. I mean, Bilal's champion, he's the guy everyone's looking for, but like this is the guy, the boogeyman, the guy who can't be beat. 18 men have tried, 18 men have failed type of situation, and you took him to the decision. That's props on you. Good job. That's great. But also at the same time, I feel like a loss is a loss.
Well, just for example, do you remember the second Usman Covington fight?
Yeah.
That was 3-2. Colby won 2 of those rounds. I don't remember anybody coming out and saying, good on Colby, like, wow, look at him go and all, and what a and he'll definitely be back. No, everybody was like, yeah, you lost.
Yeah, you bounce back. Hey, you gave it your best, and I think that's dope and that's good. But it's still a loss. And also, the dude had, every fighter comes into fights with like some type of energy. Like a lot of fighters go into fight with some type of injury, but
Yeah.
to go, I'm kind of curious what a fully healed Shavkat would look like against a fully healed Ian Gary. Uh, I don't think that. I think he wins. I think if they continue this series and they continue to fight on it, because I do think that they will fight again in the future, because I do think they are both really skilled fighters. I think they will fight again in the future eventually. But I think that this is one of those situations where someone just has your card, And I think
Well,
if they
I think we
fight two
saw it
times,
in all
I,
the exchanges. Ian Gary's main background is striking, and whenever he touched Shavkat, didn't seem like that big a deal. When Shavkat touched him, seemed like a big deal. So Ian Gary, the way that he strikes is just to touch you. It's Ian Gary's not a powerful striker in the way that we think about it. Uh, Let me see if I could check his record. Who has
I think
he on the feet, one punch, like finished like that, or one kick finished like that? I
I
can't
think he
recall.
had I think he has like a few TKOs, or like maybe earlier in the UFC run,
Let
if
me
I'm
see.
not mistaken, or has some TKO wins. But
Okay.
while you look that up, so I think that in this scenario, at least for me, Ian Gary doesn't go up, but he doesn't go down either. Because yes, you did take Shavkat to a decision, but also you took an injured Shavkat to a decision. You know what I mean? Where it's just like still very talented, very high potential fighter, but just like I wasn't. I while I was like, oh man, good for him. That was a good fight. I wasn't like super impressed, right? The
Okay, I got it. Uh, so in his UFC debut, he got a KO TKO over Jordan Williams, who let's see, is he still in the UFC? Nope, his last UFC fight was getting KO TKO'd by Ian Gary. He has not
but
fought since.
I will say this:
Mhm.
welterweight is a sleeper division. It's very it's very sneakily good. It's a very good division, stacked division, I think, because there's a lot going on right now in the welterweight division. I think it gets slept on, even though we got there's a lot going on at 170. Whether it's you've got Shavkat, got Ian Gary, you got JDM, you got Usman, you got Sean Brady. There's Colby still in the mix. There is Bilal at champion right now. So I think that it's a very stacked division as far as like talent wise goes.
Okay, and I
And
have those other ones if you want to hear them.
go ahead.
So the other two finishes that Ian Gary has in the UFC are Song Kanan, who is a win one, lose one guy right now, who was coming off of a TKO loss to Max Griffin right before that fight. And then his other one is Daniel Rodriguez, who was coming off of a loss by submission to Neil Magny and has gone on to lose after that to Kelvin Gastelum and then beat Alex Morono. So it's the guys that Ian Gary has finished are not top guys. And then as soon as he started fighting top guys, decision Neil Magny, decision split Jeff Neal, decision Michael Page, uh, loss by decision to Shavkat with a torn knee. So Ian Gary is not a destroyer. He is a point fighter at the top level who grinds out decisions. So this idea that Ian Gary is a star or has greatness, it's he's just biting Connor's gimmick. That's all that he does from a marketing perspective. Every other step that he's tried other than that has completely failed. Uh, all the involvement with his wife and pushing her out in front, that completely failed. And he's not a guy who can take the booze. So Ian Gary might hang around top 5, top 10 his whole career, but that is not a champion in my eyes.
Yeah, I think there's so much going on at 170 where I wonder. I do see Shafkat at the top of it, but yeah, I think that there's so many potential champions, potential runs for champion, right? But after the Shafkat fight, did you notice what I know? It was just like that odd interaction, that odd face off at the end.
Oh, between him and Bilal.
Yeah, I felt bad at first because I think Joe Rogan was trying to help him get because the security wouldn't let Bilal through
Mm.
when Shafkat called him into the ring and said, "Hey, let's face off." And I think Joe Rogan was trying to help and be like, "Hey guys, like he's good, like he's a champion, he can like let him in, right?" And then he was just like, "Oh, the security is not letting him in," and I think that it worked. It didn't. It turned out like not working in Bilal's favor because his whole thing is like I'm a draw. Uh, People know who I am, and his name is Remember in the Name. That's his nickname. But it was just very unfortunate that the security didn't remember his name or know who he was. And then there was when they got up and did the face off, I just felt like there was it just felt like an awkward situation.
I think at the best of times, Bilal's an awkward guy. Uh, I think that's part of why no one remembers the name. Uh, it's there's something very hilarious, by the way, about the night he won the title. DC says Leon Edwards instead of Bilal
I remember.
in ring, and then in in promoting his first defense, sec- like security won't let him through because they don't know who he is, and Joe Rogan to an arena full of people and everyone watching at home says security doesn't know that he's the champion. Uh, like body bagged twice completely unintentionally by two nice guys in the sport who try and give fighters every benefit of the doubt.
And I
For the
really
most
feel
part,
like Joe was trying to help him,
yes,
like help get him through the security. Like, hey, security, like, hey, he doesn't know he's a champ. Hey, guys, like, let him through. Like, we're trying to do a face off here. You know what I mean?
mm,
I really feel like he was trying to help, and just
yeah.
it's just unfortunate how that all played out. And if he is an awkward guy, that's fine because hey, I say it all the time. I'm the awkward awesome one. You know what I mean? It is what it is, you know. But I think that
Yeah, but for you, people do remember the name.
I appreciate that, and I I think that it's an unfortunate. I think that Bilal has, while a really good wrestler, really good cardio, really, I think that he's a good fighter. I think he has really good wrestling, really good cardio. He pushes the pace. He does a lot of things right when fighting. However, I think in my personal opinion, I think he's mishandled his, or maybe him, or someone has mishandled his welterweight run as champion, as far as getting over with the fans and kind of
Well, it's not even
that
really a
brand
run.
perception, huh?
He's got the belt now, but he still hasn't defended it once.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as his brand, his
Mhm.
reception, his
Yeah.
reception with the fans, I think it's been somewhat mishandled because, as you mentioned, there was the name mishap that when he won the belt, and then the security not letting him in, and then I guess recently he started a beef with Ariel, or I guess like Ariel
That's more of a
Helwani,
continuation
yeah,
of a longer
continuation.
held one where Ariel explicitly says on his show, I feel like multiple times a month at this point, you're not banned from the show. You're allowed to come on anytime you want. Uh, all you have to do is like reply to me or reach out to me, and I'll happily have you on my show. And then Bilal goes on to different podcasts and platforms and says that Ariel hates him and he's banned from the show when Ariel explicitly says it multiple times every month. You're not. All you have to do is like respond to any of my messages from the past where I've asked you, or reach out with your own message, and we'll set up a time for you to come on the show.
Mentioned, as you mentioned, he's asked him to come on his show multiple times. And I guess there's been no response. And then Ariel came back and was like, I've been trying since 2016 to get this dude on the show, and he's just never shown up. And then I was just like, oh, that's a weird angle then. To say, hey, you're not putting me on your show. Put me on your show. And then Ariel's like, I've been trying for the better part of a decade to get you on the show. And has like messages from all the way back from like 2016, which is crazy. And then I guess told him, hey, if you don't feel comfortable coming on the show, we can do it on your podcast, on your show, or live stream it, whatever it may be. So I was kind of like, I mean, if you're going for a heel run, then like I guess so. And I guess he said that like he doesn't want people from his team, but then like Juliana Pena has been on the podcast, CM Punk has been on the podcast, if I'm not mistaken. Jared Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that in order to improve his public perception, and this is just me thinking from like a business strategy aspect of like, because again, like we said, good wrestler, really good skills, good cardio, all that stuff. He has a lot of good qualities as a fighter, but maybe he just dropping the ball a little bit, dropping the bag a little bit on as far as the perception with fans. I think that what you should do is just lay low for like 3 months. We're going into the new, you're going into the new year. Just lay low. Don't do any podcasts. Don't be telling people. Don't tell anybody anything about like, hey, people won't let me on their show. Blah blah blah. Right? Lay low. Spend time with your family, friends. Just enjoy life as champion. Right? Because people's attention span is like a lot of people like on the internet is fairly short. More news, MMA news stories will come in. That's MMA news cycle will continue to go on. New stories will come in. New things will come in. 3 months later, 4 months later, February, right? You come back and you just do stuff, post videos, or do things that make you look interesting. Like go, whatever his hobbies are. You're a champion now. You have the money. You have the resources. I feel like you have a team. Have them record you doing stuff that you enjoy doing, right? Whether it's go-karting, axe throwing, soccer, baseball, you know what I mean? Like, go on this, I guess, challenge of sorts, right? Build up the thing, be like, hey man, I'm trying this for the first time, I'm trying that for the first time, I'm doing this, and this, or that. I think people can relate to that, right? Because it seems like in the embedded, when I watched the embedded, I feel they did it from what I remember. It's been a while, but from what I remember, it was like a good embedded for him, like showing like, hey, this is a different side of him. He's out here helping people. He's helping in the community, all that type of stuff. I think that side needs to be shown more, or at least put in a way where people can connect with you as champion or as a fighter, right? Or connect more with you. I think that I would really, yeah, I just wish things maybe just was handled better. I think that like he has potential to do, because he's in a really exciting division at welterweight, because there's a lot of competition. There's Leon Edwards, there's Shavkat, there's Ian Gary, there is Usman, there is Sean Brady. There's a lot of people, and it could make for a lot of really interesting fights and interesting moments. But because I think he could be a face, but I just feel like he's kind of, if that is his goal to become a hero slash a face, I think he's a little bit dropping on it. You know what I mean? Or what's something you think could be improved better if you were his like PR team?
Well, I think I don't know. I maybe he should sit down and have like a heart to heart with Usman on his podcast because it feels like he's in a like Kamaru Usman has somehow mentally relaxed into the UFC where he's just a part of the furniture now. It's people go Kamaru Usman and you think about former champion who had all these great fights and all this fun stuff, who's become a guy who's comfortable in his skin. And sometimes people uh, clown on Usman like whenever he's dancing and stuff like that. Like people clown on him a little bit, but it seems more now that when people talk about Kamaru Usman, it's in a more positive light. When he was on the come up, not kind of so much because he was doing a lot of things that Bilal does now in terms of complaining about how the fans perceive him or about how the media perceive him and about what he deserves and all this other stuff. So I think probably the best thing he could do is have a long form, like heart to heart with Kamaru Usman on Kamaru Usman's podcast that he does with Henry Cejudo. And they can just, no angles, no like promotional stuff, just like for a shoot, you know, this is what I feel, this is what I see. You tell me what I'm doing wrong or what I'm not seeing or how you got through this. I think that would go a long way. I think a lot of the MMA community is a lot more sentimental than they let on. So I think if he would be honest and forthright with it, I feel like people would accept it and probably be on board. But I don't expect him to ever do that. He just seems really private. From what I remember, the embedded, it didn't show a lot of his like personal life. It showed like stuff that he does in his gym and stuff like that, and more of like related to his professional life. There wasn't a lot of like personal touches that I remember from embedded in terms of spending time with family or like having pets or something like that, where you saw an interaction that was very human, and kind of vulnerable. So I feel like either that's not him or he's unwilling to show it. In any case, I feel like there's no real helping him at this point. It seems like he might eventually learn that lesson down the road. But yeah, I think if you're saying one thing he could do would just be like talk to Usman, keep it straight, keep it honest, say what you're feeling, what you're seeing from your end, and I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, I think that would help too. I think getting to talk to Uzma would be nice. I think it would definitely be super beneficial for the reasons you mentioned. And again, lay low, then you emerge, be like, hey man, I've been out here traveling the world or trying these new hobbies, trying that. Start up a series. I feel that like I think people would gravitate toward that. They'd be like, oh, okay, this dude just like get to know some of the stuff you do for fun outside of it. I think that could go a long way for him. Man. I think to like drum up a lot of like positive press for him. But the there is one other welterweight. There are two other welterweights that very curious to get your opinion on too, Buckley and Covington. But I feel like there's one more fight. Do you want to go into the Covington Buckley stuff, or did you want to talk about the Crown Gracie thing, or you feel like you just want to skip into the Buckley Covington?
Um, I feel like we'll save that for last. I have a few more things on UFC
Mhm.
310 that we could do really quick if you want.
Okay.
So Cyril Gane, Alexander Volkov. Cyril Gane got the split decision victory. Most people, it seemed, believed that that was incorrect. I am of that opinion. Some people are saying a robbery. Of all time robberies, I think it's hard to say a three round fight where I agree that Cyril won one of the rounds. I find it hard to say that it's one of the biggest robberies in the sport. I think clearly the judges got it wrong. Is it an all time robbery? No. Uh, where the UFC goes from here, I think Volkov, you're not going to get a big step back. You looked really good. Probably another big fight in it for him. For Gane, probably the worst outcome possible because if you had won and won convincingly, you're looking at, you know, a Tom Aspinall fight, or if Tom Aspinall were to get hurt, maybe you get your rematch with John Jones, and uh, it unlocks these top level fights for you. But it seems like the UFC got some bad luck, and now it's Aspinall versus Jones or nothing at this point. Uh, so sad for Volkov that he ended up on the wrong side of the decision. Good for Cyril and our picks that he ended up winning, but he didn't really build any momentum off of it, and he didn't really advance any in the rankings because he lost the fight. So not great for the judges or for anybody really, just a lose-lose all around for everyone involved.
Yeah, it was tough too because as a big Cyril Gane fan, I was happy that he won, but I also agree that I thought Volkov won because round one was close. I gave it to Cyril, but round two was more of like the toss up, and round three definitely was Volkov. And I felt round two was Volkov. It was close, but I felt like Volkov got round two, and I felt Volkov got round three. And so when they said they was doing the judging, and then I thought they were going to say Volkov, but when they didn't, I was kind of surprised. And I think also everyone else was surprised. Cyril was surprised. Even Cyril was a really, hey, just shows you what great guy Cyril is. Because Cyril, even after the win, he was kind of like, hey, happy that my name got called, happy I got the win, but that performance was not worthy of the occasion, I guess you could say. But turns out the reason Cyril looked so flat-footed in that fight, or didn't look like he had that, he's known for his footwork, known for his striking, getting to go the distance management. And we didn't get to see a lot of it because he broke 3 of his 5 toes during like the first few seconds of the first round, which is also insane that he fought for a whole 15 minutes with broken toes. And they showed that it was like the big toe, that middle toe, and that third toe were all broken. I was like, that's crazy. And it shows you how tough Cyril is.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, still it's tough. I did think Volkov won, but as far as all-time robbers, I don't think it's anything like, oh man, this, because again, he did win one of the rounds, close on the other two. The second round was fairly close. Third round was Volkov's. Well, I do think they did get it wrong. I do think Volkov won, but happy for Cyril. He gets to move up, onwards and upwards. And I hope they take care of Volkov and be like, hey, this was not the right choice. Hey, the right call. Hey, at least hey, blah 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 blah. Right. Kron Gracie, Bryce Mitchell. That slam was crazy. It felt very vintage Rampage Jackson-esque. Kron Gracie's jiu-jitsu skills his whole approach to the fight felt very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
It felt like you're watching like UFC 3. He's just depending solely on his jiu-jitsu. You saw him pull guard like what, 3, 4, 5 times. And it felt like it was so slow that he was doing it. Not to say that he was slow, it just felt like he just kept on pulling guard, which didn't do much with outside of that one armbar, but Bryce Mitchell eventually caught on. He jumped for guard a fourth time, framed him off, and just yeah, hit him with the Rampage Jackson spine buster type move. Knocked him out, got him with the elbow, I think it was, and got him out of there.
Yeah, it's Cron Gracie. You are the first. We're going to touch on a couple more fights very briefly. Cron Gracie, retire. There's no reason for you to be in the UFC anymore. If that's going to be your offensive pulling guard, it's not going to work. Uh, as as much as you may have been close on one submission against the top level guys, every top level guy now has good enough submission defense that you're not going to win the fight off your back pulling guard. It doesn't work. It's a last resort, even in jiu-jitsu. You're not supposed to do. You're supposed to work and try and get top control, and then if all else fails, then you pull guard. That's supposed to be a last resort. It's not supposed to be your first line of offense. Uh, so Cron Gracie should retire and teach jiu-jitsu. That's what he should do. This fight should not have been on the main card, and good for Bryce Mitchell in that he got put in a smash spot where you're supposed to go crush a can, and he did it. Awesome for you. Got the big slam and the elbows. Got your big moment. So good for you to get back on track after your super disturbing knockout loss to Josh Emmett. Hopefully, with the renewed strength and conditioning approach, get back on track, start getting some wins, maybe get into title contention. We'll see how it goes. Uh, Other fight on the main card, Nate Landwehr, Dooho Choi. We were right about the style of the fight, wrong completely about who would win. So absolutely, Dooho Choi looked phenomenal in this fight.
Yeah.
Uh, it felt like one of those ones where Nate Landwehr is getting pieced up and he was going to come back and for no reason just land a big shot and get the other guy out of there. But Dooho Choi's defensive movement was phenomenal. Uh, Ducking and getting out of the way of those punches. He looks really good. Uh, Looks like he might be on a run himself. So super excited for Dooho Choi. But again, uh, no dirt on Nate Landwehr. This will not set him back at all. He'll still be a fun fighter who everybody will tune in to see.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I agree.
And then very briefly, Anthony Smith, we love you. Please retire. Dominic Reyes did not look that good. I agree with Anthony Smith's his judgment of the fight. He said Dominic Reyes didn't look that good, but Anthony Smith just didn't look really bad. I agree with that. Anthony Smith, there's no reason to fight anymore. I believe Dominic Reyes said in the press conference that Anthony Smith was asking him to hit him, which
Oh yeah,
is
because he had
really
lost
disturbing.
his long time partner, like training partner and mentor slash friend. So he was pretty still grieving from that loss. I think
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, that trainer slash coach was been with him since like the beginning of his career.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I
So
feel like he was still very broken up, very sad about that, which is very understandable.
yeah, we wish all the best for Anthony Smith here. We love Anthony Smith.
Mhm.
Um, there's no reason for Anthony Smith to get beat up or hurt anymore. We don't want to see that. We want all the best and good feelings and good vibes for Anthony Smith. Uh, you're one of the best analysts in the game. Uh,
Absolutely.
one of
One of
the
my favorite
best
people to listen to.
talkers in the sport. You have all the experience. You've been in there with some of the best. There's no reason to keep fighting. The championship's not going to happen. It's time to hang it up and pick up your headset and go out there and be one of the premier broadcast talents in all of mixed martial arts, which is exactly what you are.
And
Oh, and for the
no,
other side, good for Dominic Reyes. Obviously, you get a win. I'm still not super high on him. I agree that he didn't look that good. But hey, getting back on track is getting back on track. They don't all have to be pretty. So uh, I'm sure he'll take any win he can get after that string of losses he was on. So good for him. Still don't know where that really leaves him. Um, but I did want to address the other judging on the card that was also super questionable. Uh, this one was very debatable, and I understand why it went this way, but I didn't agree. Movsar Evalev, unanimous decision 29-28 over Aljamain Sterling. I had it the other way 29-28. I could see why
I
the
thought
judges
Aljo
gave it.
won too.
Yeah, it was close.
It was
But
close, but yeah.
yeah, and uh, someone at the UFC needs to reach out to Aljo and either explain themselves or come to some sort of understanding because Aljo is one of the best fighters on the UFC roster,
Oh, I
and
agree.
he keeps showing up for these super tough tests that no one wants to take, and you can't keep dogging him in these close fights. And there really needs to be an explanation why he was not on the main card. He's a former champion, and he deserves more respect than he's getting. And hopefully something good happens for him soon because I feel like he's really turning the corner with a lot of fans after this past fight. He was getting a lot of cheers, and I think that a lot of fans are coming around and seeing that Aljo's a super nice guy, and it feels like he's kind of getting done dirty in some of these dealings.
Yeah, I hope for all good things for Aljo because I had him winning that fight, but it was a very close fight. But yeah, I thought his he got. I think he should have got the split decision, but hey, it is not how the cookie crumbled this time, unfortunately. And moving onwards to
Okay,
the
hold on. Just
last.
yeah, just last one I
But
wanted to talk about on
but
this one. Luque gets the submission victory by Anaconda choke over
oh yeah, that
Felipe
was
Colombo.
surprising.
That was probably the other big moment of the card. Uh, Good for Luque to get back on track. It looked like man he was headed out of there. I was counting him out uh, really hard in the preview, and he came through. So good for him getting back on track and looking like he's kind of restored himself somehow from his last few performances.
He has something like 14 finishes or something like that, which is crazy.
Yeah, I believe he's tied with Matt Brown or maybe one behind Matt Brown for
Hmm.
all time in that division now. So good for him, and maybe this is the start of another run for him.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
All right, and we'll get to now the last fight card of the year, UFC Fight Night, Covington versus Buckley. Who do you got?
For the whole card or just for the Buckley Covington?
Let's do top three. So first one,
Joaquin Buckley, huh?
oh yeah, I was gonna say them each in a row, but you go ahead.
Oh, Joaquin Buckley. I have him third round early knockout, early third round knockout, and then I'll go through the reasoning in a second. I think Billy Q. While this is a really good fight, Cub Swanson. I think maybe Billy Q gets it done by decision. I think Manel Kopp beats Bruno Silva. I think by TKO in the second. Yeah. What about you?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with Colby by submission in the fourth.
Hmm.
I think that he's been working on some stuff in the lab, and I think that we might finally see more finishing instincts, hopefully, in this one. I think there's an opportunity for it. I'm still big on Buckley. I think he's got a lot of potential. I do not think that this is uh this is one of those ones where it's going to be one-sided. I think this is going to be a back and forth affair as long as it goes, and I think it'll be a really entertaining main event to end the year on. Uh, Cub Swanson, Billy Q. I have Cub Swanson. I was really impressed by his fight with who was that? I think it was Hakeem Dawodu. 2 fights ago. He lost a split decision in his last one to Andre Feely. I still think Cub Swanson is a dog, man, and I like Billy Q. Uh, I think he can be a lot of fun, but I don't think that he's a top level kind of operator. And I feel like those are the type of guys who can beat Cub Swanson in a dogfight. Is if you make it a dogfight, I think Cub's going to win. I think you have to be a level above in technique and strategy to beat him, and I don't think that Billy Q is. So I'll go Cub Swanson, and then Manel Cop, Bruno Silva. I like Manel Cop's talent way more, so I'm gonna pick him by decision. Uh, but his like injury history and professionalism sometimes kind of scares me. So I'm going with Cop, but it's tentative because I never know how healthy he is. It always seems like a bad injury is around the corner.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to the Covington Buckley fight,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I feel like we're probably going to be on different sides of this. I mean, we picked two different fighters.
Do you think it's one sided?
I I pers I before I give my opinion, I want to hear what is two questions for you. What do you think about this fight? I know you kind of briefly went into why you picked Colby.
Mm.
What do you think with the win? If Colby can pull off the win, what do you think is next for him? And if he loses, what do you think is next for him? And
Okay.
then general thoughts about the fight.
So with a win, he's still ranked number 6 right now. So with a win, I think that he can draw into. It's going to depend on timeline. So I think that realistically, if he wins this, I think he's not going to get another guy of his generation. I would assume he's going to get matched up against another guy who's a generation younger to see if he can give the rub to that guy in the same way that I would imagine that's why they put this together with him and Buckley. So I think if he wins, his prize is probably JDM, unfortunately for him. But I think that's just the nature of the business when you've had your title shots already and you still have a name and you're in the UFC hanging around at the top. I think that's just the nature of the game. Is if you want another one, you're gonna have to go get it the hard way, the nightmare mode way, and I think that'll be JDM. Uh, if he loses, Buckley's ranked number 9, so he'd probably crash down to around like number 8. So I could see something like Masvidal has been advocating for a fight, so you could see maybe a rematch in Miami again if they wanted to do that. Or who else is there? Maybe like a Carlos Prates or somebody like that.
It's a nasty fight.
Yeah. I figure either way, Colby's next fight is probably not a kind one, if we're all being honest. He's had multiple shots at the title, so if he wants to get back to that road, it's going to be nightmare mode. And if he starts slipping down, I think that they're going to take guys who they think can really do something, uh, and they're going to have him be the name that they build theirs off of. Uh, just kind of the nature of the sport and what happens when you've had a really good career to this point, which Colby has had, is that's your reward on the way out, is the young tough guys who they're looking to launch into that stardom. But in general on the fight, uh, still I think that this performance, win or lose, I think people were going to be much higher on Colby after this performance than they were uh, the week before. Just because I think the last thing in everyone's memory is that Leon performance, and I think that that was maybe one of the worst performances of Colby's career. I think that all that time off really didn't help, and I think that he he might have been injured or something like that, because I think that that was uncharacteristically bad, and I don't think that he's already washed at like 36 years old. I think he's still got some left in the tank, and I think it's just whatever injury or uh, ring rust or whatever it is. I think that either mentally or physically he was not prepared that night, and I think he will be come fight night against Joaquin Buckley.
I feel that is a fair assessment. I feel like mine's is probably not going to be as nice slash mildly harsher, but it's just I think you let me know if you disagree or if anything about it.
Okay.
But I think that Colby desperately needs a win in this upcoming fight with Buckley. I think that
Well, if you're talking about
his
like title contention, yes, but
no, I
if
mean
he
like
loses, he's not in that game anymore.
I feel like just relevancy in general, just in my opinion personally, I think that like he's 1-2 in his last three fights over the course of 4 years, and then like 2-3 over five fights in the last 5 years. And he's had like three shots at the title, and he has gone 0-3 in all three of those fights. You know, got worked by Kamaru Usman, and then like lost to Kamaru Usman twice, right? Like got worked by Kamaru, and then got dog walked by Leon Edwards. He got the win against, and then this fight against Buckley. I mean, he's got the win against Masvidal in between there, right? I think that the Colby character, the Colby Covington character, I feel like it's fair to say that like what he does on camera is a character. I mean, like it's kind of well known at this point between like fighters and fans that like a lot of people say like, oh, when you meet him in person, he's actually a pretty swell guy. He's a pretty cool guy. People who've met him in person say that like he's a nice dude, chill dude, and like he only turns on like the character he portrays in front of the media is only when the cameras turn on. Like he's only this WWE level heel when the cameras turn on, right? And I think that in order to keep this character relevant, he needs a win. Because I think that the Colby Covington character is only really effective or slash at its peak when he is winning or winning and or in top ranked fights, like fighting top ranked guys, right? Like fighting a Leon Edwards, fighting a Kamaru Usman, fighting a Jorge Masvidal, those kind of dudes. Because after that loss, right? Again, going 1-2 in like 4 years, 0-3 on like title attempts. If he loses tomorrow against Joaquin Buckley, right? And goes 1-3 or like 2-5, right? I think that shuts the door on the Kobe Covington character because if you lose, let's say he gets either knocked out or he gets like it's another repeat of the Leon Edwards fight, right? I think it will be hard to keep up the character of like, oh, I'm the best fighter in the UFC. Watch me go fight Jeff Neal afterwards on the prelims, like, or headlining the prelims or opening a main card. You know what I mean? Because because I think he's like 6 right now, like ranked number 6.
Hmm.
If you lose to Joaquin Buckley, you go down to 9 or 8, one of the 2 spots, and really you're falling more further down into the top 10, top 15. And now you're really, who are you fighting at that point? Like, you're either fighting guys like Jeff Neal or guys like Carlos Prates. You know what I mean? Either one of those situations is not good for a career, right? Like, because if you're fighting Jeff Neal, if you're on a 2-fight losing streak, you're 1-3 in the last 4 years. You're 0-3 in title attempts. You had another bad loss, 2 back-to-back bad losses, and now you're fighting like a guy like Jeff Neal, who's on the come up, not on the come up. My bad, sorry. Who's fighting a guy like Jeff Neal, who's another veteran, on a main event prelim, like a feature prelim or an opening the card. I think it's harder to kind of go on podcasts or go on interviews and go, hey, I'm the best fighter in the UFC. I'm this guy, I'm that guy. And do your Ric Flair heel move if you continue to lose. Because then I don't think people are going to care as much. Because, I mean, he got a lot of backlash against when he lost to Leon. And then if you take another loss to Jeff Neal, I mean, that would be pretty much rap skis. But going against Pratis, right? It makes it, I feel like he might become a gatekeeper at that point. Because I don't think do I think it ends his career? I don't think so. Like, losing to Buckley, I don't think it ends his career, but I think it puts him into gatekeeper status. Where now you're going to be taking on the guys who are on the come up, who are trying to make a name for themselves off your name. And you have to kind of be like, oh, no, if you still want to fight, you're kind of like, oh, I'm still that guy who can still put fights together or like do things, you know? But in that kind of fight against a Carlos Pratis, Colby has everything to lose and nothing to gain. And Carlos Pratis has everything to gain from a fight like that, right? But if Colby wins, it doesn't get him a title shot, right?
No, he still needs at least one more.
Yeah, I think he needs like 2 or 3. But like,
it depends on the matchup.
Yeah, it does, and I think that like,
if you're Shavkat, I think that if Colby gets 2 in a row and he's in the top 5, I think that's where you're aiming your sights in terms of getting attention and being on top of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think that if you win 2 more and Shavkat's champion, I do think that is a possibility. If Leon ends up winning the belt again, I think that it's a harder thing to do, but I think there's a lot of, it's like when your team is in the wild card situation for the NFL and you're kind of like, okay, if we win this game and then this person loses this game and then this team loses this game, we can work our way, or you're in the regular season, you're trying to get wild card and you're like, if we win this game, they lose this game, this team loses that game, we can work our way into a wild card. And then we need us to win and them to lose and this, and this, you know what I mean? To like work our way into the playoffs. And, you know, there's a lot that needs to happen, I feel like, right? Because I think the reason why I feel like it's a harder fight, I think Colby is very tough and he's very durable. But Colby Covington shows up to every fight with the same game plan. And that never changes. He has a very wear and tear style. He's going to come in, he's going to put the pace on you, he's going to put a volume of punches on you that aren't going to knock you out, but are going to bother you. You know what I mean? And then he's going to try to go for a takedown. He's going to get you against the cage. He's going to try to like dump you on your butt. He's going to try to get you into a takedown. You know what I mean? And that's kind of generally the layout of all of Colby's fights, or most of how he fights usually. And it's very impressive that he's kept up with it to this point in his career, right? Like, to do this as long as he has been doing it, of like, hey, I'm just going to wear on these guys. I'm going to try to like drown them with the cardio, right? but I think that I guess the problem with that kind of approach every single fight is eventually you're gonna you're gonna be the old guy or the older guy coming up with this wear and tear. Like, I'm just gonna work him with cardio, going against a guy who's younger, stronger, faster, more explosive, who has the cardio to keep up with you. And he's just gonna be like, "Oh man, all right, cool, you're trying to do this." And I think that it's kind of a losing battle, or it's going a fight up the hill, because I don't see a world where Kobe knocks out Joaquin Buckley. I feel like that's very unlikely.
Yeah, no. The only path to finish is submission.
Right. And then I think that Buckley could win a decision, because I mean, I thought Wonder Boy was beating Buckley, and then he somehow found a way to like get the win. Because when you take Kobe's record in the last however many fights, 4 fights, 3 fights, Joaquin Buckley on the other end, right?
Mm-hmm.
6-0 as a welterweight. He moved down. He since coming to welterweight, he's looked phenomenal. Like 6-0 as the welterweight, 4-0 in 2024. I think that welterweight was the weight Joaquin Buckley was supposed to be at this entire time. I think that like that crazy viral like spinning back ninja kick thing carried him for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But then you kind of like, and it was always that like he was kind of like in the middle of the road, kind of like 5-4 is middleweight type thing. And people were kind of like, oh yeah, like he's in the middle of the road. But then moving down to welterweight, he's looked like a completely new fighter. He's looked phenomenal. He's looked great. He's been very explosive. He's fast. He's strong. He's this. He's that. And it used to be, oh, I'm gonna watch the fight because there's a chance of a knockout. And I think he's gotten better and more well-rounded as a fighter, where now it's not just like, oh, I'm waiting for a knockout. It's like, oh, I'm like seeing the evolution of this fighter come along, and being like really well-rounded. Because we saw some grappling in the Wonder Boy fight. And I think that, I mean, Joaquin Buckley always looks super buff and ripped, right? I think that he has the power advantage over Colby. I think he will have the speed advantage over Colby. And I think he'll have the explosive advantage over Colby. He's going to come into a fight week in tremendous shape. So it makes me hard. It's hard for me to see like, okay, where's outside of cardio, which Joaquin Buckley's probably going to come into this fight with really good cardio, and that's like Kobe's main thing is I need to have better cardio than you. But if the guy you're fighting has an advantage in every other area and has good cardio too, it makes it hard to see like, okay, well, what is he going to do to kind of stand out,
No, I agree. I think that Colby's new team that he went to after American Top Team, I assume that they're working on other stuff to improve his game. Because I feel like at American Top Team, his progress kind of stalled out. He stopped adding new weapons and progressing as a fighter. So part of it is I think that was an all-time underperformance from him against Leon. I think that that's not representative of who he is. And I think that I'm a big fan of Buckley and his talent and what he can do. I don't know if in a 5-round atmosphere, if he knows how to navigate that and not chase the viral moment. Because him knocking out Colby would be a big viral moment that uh, a lot of people would celebrate him for. And it would really put him over with a lot of the fans. So I don't know if he's going to come in and be able to keep his calm enough to pace himself for the 5 round atmosphere. I agree that he's been getting better and becoming a more complete fighter, and that this is a very tough fight, and why I think this will be close. The reason I think that Colby will be able to get a finish is because I'm banking on he's been working on submissions with his new team that he's had for a few years now, and that Buckley will be very excited and will be hunting that knockout, and that he won't stay patient enough to try and win a decision and then see if a knockout will come to him. I think he's going to come in really aggressive, and the over aggression will allow Colby to get to spots where he can lean on the gas tank of Buckley. And for all of Colby's fault, I think that once he gets a good position uh, against Buckley, I think Buckley's going to have a hard time getting away, even with explosive movements. I think Colby's understanding of wrestling is extremely high level.
Yeah, he has really good wrestling and very tough dude, very durable.
Yeah. So I think that there's definitely a lot of reasons why I think this fight is close. And I'm a big fan of Buckley, and I think that he does have a future towards the top end of this division. I just think at this exact moment, this might be one of those opportunities to learn a lesson for Buckley where he's going to get too over aggressive early, not pace himself, and then Colby will be able to take advantage later in the fight. Like much later. It's in my prediction, I said the 4th round because I think it will take that long. I think Buckley's in tremendous shape, and I think he has a lot of heart. I don't think he's going to quit. So I think it'll take all the way to the 4th for him to get gas and exhausted. And at that point is when there'll be enough momentum for Colby to take advantage and get a submission.
I could
So
see all those points too, because
it
there's
is
a
close
very
though
real possibility, huh?
It is close though in my mind.
Because I feel like I can see all those points, because I do think that that is a possibility that he's like, oh man, I want to go for the finish. I'm gonna get these highlight win. I'm gonna like knocking out Colby would definitely boost his name up even more. And I think he could call for a title shot. I don't know, would he get? I don't know if he'll get a title shot, but I think knocking out Colby would definitely grant you the legitimacy of calling for a title shot afterwards. You know, you're 4-0 in 2024, you're 6-0 as a welterweight, you knock out a guy who was a former title challenger. Hey, let me get the winner of Shavkat and below, right?
Mm.
I think he loses. I think if he loses, I don't see it affecting him all that much. Like, hey, you shot upwards. If it didn't work out, it is what it is. You work your way back up. You know what I mean? I think he takes another, like, say, if he fights a JDM, right? Like a Jack Della Maddalena and gets a win off that, I think that puts him in the exact same spot to call for another title. I think there's more roads back to the title, I think, for Buckley than there is necessarily Colby. But I think that's also why I said early 3rd round, because Colby is very durable and he's very tough. I think that the opening rounds, he's going to be able to take these punches, right? Joaquin hits very hard. I think Colby will take it on the chin. I think he'll eat a lot of the punches that are coming in the 1st round. And I think that Colby will give his punches too. I think he'll try to put the pace on him and try to go for those takedowns. I think Joaquin Buckley, his takedown defense, I think will hold up to a degree on that. And I think it stays on its feet for the most of the fight. I think the fight stays on its feet most of the time. If he can stop the takedown, I think it stays on the feet most of the fight. But I think after 3 rounds of like back and forth, really, there's only so many shots that you can take from a power puncher where I think that maybe somewhere early to mid third round, you catch another like overhand over the top or like a hook, like a counter hook, and it drops him. Either it's a KO or a TKO. I think it kind of falls into that area because if I'm walking Buckley's coaches, right, I would be telling him, hey, you have all the advantages. You have almost all the advantages in this fight. You're the stronger fighter, you're the younger fighter, you're the younger fighter, you're the stronger fighter, you're the faster fighter, you're the more explosive fighter, right? Colby has experience on you and he has potentially cardio over you.
Mm.
You need to not get reckless in this fight. Be patient, be calculated, go for those strikes, go for the combos, pop, 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 back, and then exit. Get back in there, pop, 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 then exit. You know what I mean? You're coming in, you're getting your combinations off. You're gonna keep the thread of the takedown right, and being like, hey, even if you don't land the takedown, go pop, 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 1-2, 1-2, and then try to go for a blast double. If you take him down, great. If you don't, go for it, and then if it doesn't feel like you're gonna get it, like eject and reset, or go off the overhand, go boom, 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 overhand into a single, and try to like just keep the thread of the takedown of like, oh, this is not a striking match. I can take you down too, and keep the thread of like the takedown defense, right? Or of if you know you're going to know Kobe's if I'm Buckley's coaches, I'm like Kobe, you're gonna know Kobe's gonna feel like the takedown is his key to victory because if he can get you down, then I think the submission, like you said, I think the submission is Kobe's path to victory, but Kobe's gonna have to be able to take Joaquin down.
Right.
And if I'm his coaches, keep the thread of the takedown there, but also throwing the knees to the body, like throwing the knees up the center, tight uppercuts, you know what I mean? Up to through the center, just to keep Kobe honest and being like, hey, you can go for a takedown, but you may also catch a knee, you could catch an elbow, you could catch an uppercut up the center. Now they got the 12-6 elbows. Just letting him know that is still a possibility when you're throwing these punches. And when you got him hurt, like, because there's gonna be chances, since Joaquin is a stronger fighter, boom, you catch him and you rock him. Don't get overly aggressive. We've seen too many fighters over the years. Me and you both have seen too many fighters who come in there, boom, they get someone hurt, they smell blood in the water, and they turn into a shark. And they want to go for the finish. They're just like rushing it, and what happens? You get caught, rushing in, hands down. You're thinking, oh, he's hurt. The Alex Pereira versus Izzy, right? Or we've seen a variety of other ones. Or you come in there rushing, and I don't know why people do this. It hurts me so much when people are going pop, 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 pop. They get him hurt. They're rushing him. Blah, 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 and then they go for a double leg out of nowhere. It's just like, what are you doing? Why go for the double leg right now? You have him hurt, going to the double leg and going to the ground right now. You're giving them time to rest, especially if you. And I think it wouldn't be wise knowing that Kobe that's his bread and butter, is being a wrestler. So if you get him hurt, being patient, waiting for the opportunity, not rushing in there. If you get him hurt off of an overhand or a hook, just kind of walk him down. But maybe just like teep to the body. Hey, body shot. Hey, hit him with a couple jabs and hit him with a hook. See if you can, or a straight through the split the guard. You know what I mean? And kind of not getting overly eager for the finish, and just kind of picking your moment, staying calculated, staying calm. And kind of like how Shavkat walks down his opponents. You never see Shavkat like rush for a finish. He's always very calculated, always very like crisp, very fluid, very smooth. He'll like pick his shots. And then when he sees an opening, then he'll capitalize on it. Like when he hit that spinning heel kick. Or when you see him get the little semi-awkward rear naked choke type situation, the standing choke on Jeff Neal. I think that when you see those opportunities arrive, I think I would tell him, hey, you do that. If he goes for a takedown, use that grappling defense, that takedown defense. Keep it standing. You know what I mean? Because I think that Joaquin Buckley's best chance of winning this fight is if it's standing. I think Colby's best chance is on the ground. And that's if you're his coaches, you're drilling takedown defenses. You're drilling how to prevent it. You're drilling how to get up, defending against the cage wrestling, I think that's probably best bet. And I feel like if you're Colby, if I was his coaches, I feel like you got to work, pushing. You got to show up. I think it's going to be hard to show up with a different game plan. You know what I mean? And being like, oh man, to break those habits. But I think that you got to work your strikes into a takedown, right? And kind of get into it, keep the strike, because Buckley knows you're going to go for a takedown. So you got to find a way of like getting kicks in, rushing in, boom, 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 you know what I mean? Keeping him occupied, maybe go for like getting some clinch work, can get him against the cage, get some clinch work, throwing your knees, throwing your elbow, so, you know what I mean? And trying to like go for a trip, try to use that chin wrestling to kind of like grab and kind of like take him down from there. Utilize that top pressure, try to like, or get into a cycle choke, get him with the knees, try to just wear on him, make him hold your weight, you know what I mean? And try to like tire him out by being on top and being very top heavy. But I think, and then once maybe like you say, fourth round, third round, if you see the opportunity, go for the finish, but like try to tire him out over the course of 4 rounds, 5 rounds. I think because you gotta keep moving forward though, because I think it's hard. It'll be hard for Colby to win fighting off his back foot in this particular fight.
I think in general for him, I don't think he's a back foot type of fighter.
Yeah. So I feel that getting to a submission is going to be the key part, but I do think it's going to, whether it's a finish in the 3rd or 4th round, but that's what I'm going to say. I highly doubt it's going to be a first round finish on either side. I feel like that would honestly shock me.
Yeah.
If it was like a first round finish on either side, I'd be like, oh, wow, did not expect that. But yeah, that's I think that's, we can call it.
All right.
That's our time. That's our show. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had a good time listening to us ramble at 2 a.m. in the morning. We enjoyed making it, Come back next week. We'll talk our thoughts, our pins, end of the year, favorite cards of the year. Do a what do you think? I feel like we could do a best gym of the year, best coach of the year, our own MMA awards.
Yeah, we'll talk about who got crowned, and we'll talk about who we think should have won.
Exactly.
We'll give out our own kind of awards. We'll talk about this card, and maybe we'll preview the beginning of the next year and what's already been laid out.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. We got our own unified pound for pound list of who we think the pound for pound list should be. Do it draft style. I mean, there's gonna be exciting fights coming up. Wei Li versus Tatiana Suarez. That's exciting.
But we'll get to that on the next episode.
Yes. So enjoy your holidays. Enjoy your whatever you're gonna do over this time period. Friends, family, enjoy all that. So yes, see y'all. Bye.